Chapter 1. The Denial. The words ripped through the sterile hallway of Mercy Hospital, Chicago, like a gunshot echoing in a cathedral. That baby ain't mine. Ethan Cross didn't shout so much as detonate. His voice was sharp, booming, the kind that bounced off walls and made everyone in the corridor freeze for a half second before pretending not to have heard. Nurses kept their heads down. Visitors stared at their phones harder. Nobody dared step in. He stood there in a tailored navy coat worth more than most people's yearly rent, his jaw rigid, his storm gray eyes colder than Lake Michigan in January. "You really think I'd fall for this?" he barked, pacing like a caged wolf. "A maid? A nobody? This is pathetic, Janelle, even for you." On the hospital bed, Janelle Carter sat motionless, arms curled around her newborn as if her body were the last shield against the storm. Her hands trembled, but her grip on her son was fierce, unyielding. Her eyes were swollen, not from labor, but from everything else. She didn't speak, her lips pressed into a bloodless line, her posture curled forward, cocooning her son Micah as though she could shelter him from every cruel word. "Say something," Ethan snarled. "Hell, you dragged me down here just to play this scam out. At least have the guts to look me in the eye." Her voice came as a whisper, raspy with exhaustion and grief. "Please, just look at him." I did look. His laugh was bitter, hollow. "He looks like every other damn baby in this place." Then it happened. The morning sun slanted through the blinds and cut across Micah's tiny face. Ethan's gaze fell there, just for a second, unwilling, accidental, and he saw them. Those eyes, storm gray, that impossible, uncanny color, his color. His father's before him, a hue so rare it was practically a family crest. His throat bobbed. For the first time in years, Ethan hesitated. Micah's skin was pale, too pale to ignore. Ethan's pulse skipped, but then his jaw tightened again, armor snapping back into place. He scoffed, shaking his head. "Coincidence. Genetics are messy. Doesn't mean a damn thing." The world hushed around them. Even the monitors seemed to hold their beeps. Janelle saw it. The flicker in his eyes, the fracture in his certainty. A sob clawed at her throat, escaping as a half-breath, half-cry. She bent and kissed her baby's head, clutching him tighter. "You planned this," Ethan spat, regaining momentum like a man drowning in his own denial. "Probably slept with someone else and thought you could pin it on me. Golden ticket, huh?" His words were knives, jagged and deliberate. Janelle flinched but did not speak. Now whispers rose in the hallway. Family members, interns, orderlies. They watched the powerful white billionaire accuse the black woman in a hospital gown. "You think just because you worked in my house, because you cleaned my glass floors, you get to drag my name through the mud?" Ethan stepped closer, towering. "Trash. That's what you are." A nurse shifted like she might intervene, then didn't. The hierarchy of power was too steep. Janelle closed her eyes. Silent tears streaked down her cheeks. Not movie tears, not sobs, just the quiet, heavy kind that fell when fighting was pointless. The war had already been fought. What remained was survival. Chapter 2. The Weight of Silence. The snow had not yet melted when Janelle carried Micah through the narrow stairwell of her apartment building on the south side of Chicago. The hallway smelled of fried onions, damp laundry, and age, memories clinging to plaster. She balanced the baby against her shoulder, her free hand gripping the chip banister, the weight of exhaustion pulling at every bone. Inside, her apartment was barely more than a room and a half. Peeling paint, a rattling radiator, secondhand furniture rescued from curbs. But it was hers. A fortress, however fragile. She laid Micah gently in a borrowed crib, tucked him beneath blankets stitched with someone else's history, and sat at the wobbly table with her head in her hands. The memory of Ethan's words in the hospital replayed like a cruel loop. Trash. Liar. Pathetic. Her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. Cash the check. Stop the lies. Last warning. Her fingers trembled as she deleted it. She pressed her palms to her eyes, forcing back tears. Ethan's reach was long. His lawyers, his money, his power could follow her even into this broken-down building. She felt surrounded, even when alone. But then a knock rattled the thin door. She stiffened, clutching Micah from the crib. "Who is it?" "It's me, Mia. Open up." The voice belonged to Ms. Alvarez, her neighbor from across the hall, a widow in her 60s who had lived in the building longer than anyone. Her presence always came with the smell of homemade soup and the kind of wisdom earned from surviving storms most people couldn't imagine. Janelle opened the door to find the older woman balancing a steaming pot. "You need to eat," Miss Alvarez said simply, brushing past her and setting the pot on the stove. Janelle's lips trembled. "You don't have to." "I know I don't," Miss Alvarez interrupted. "That's why it matters." She turned, studying Janelle's drawn face, her dark circles, the way she cradled Micah as if afraid he might vanish. "What's wrong now?" Janelle lifted a crumpled envelope from the counter. "He gave me this before Micah was born, $50,000. Told me to get rid of it." Her voice broke. "And he's still denying him, even after seeing him, but for a moment, I swear, he saw something." Ms. Alvarez's mouth tightened. "Men like him think money solves everything, but you don't need his belief to raise your boy. You need your own." Janelle sank into a chair, Micah nestled in her arms. "How do I explain to him, when he's older, why his father denied him?" "You explain by showing him you never did." Miss Alvarez's voice was steady, soft. "You chose him. That's enough." The words settled in Janelle's chest, both comfort and ache. She pressed her lips to Micah's soft hair, whispering, "You are not a mistake." Winter in Chicago was merciless. Wind cut through coats, snow clung dirty along curbs, and the elevated trains screeched like tired beasts. Janelle walked to her shifts at Harper's Diner, the neon sign buzzing, the smell of grease clinging to her uniform. She worked long hours, her feet blistered, her back sore. Micah stayed with Miss Alvarez during her shifts, wrapped in hand-me-down blankets, safe under the watchful eyes of the widow who treated him like her own grandson. But the whispers followed. At the diner, two truckers leaned too close in their booth. "You hear about that billionaire's maid?" one muttered. "Claims he's the dad. Crazy. Women like that always after a payout." The other chuckled. "Bet she planned it." Janelle kept wiping the counter, her face carefully blank. But her stomach twisted. When her shift ended, she pulled her coat tighter and walked home through falling snow. She heard the whispers outside bodegas, in the stairwell, even in church pews. Liar, gold digger, trap. She carried them silently. That night she sat by the crib and opened her worn journal. She had been writing letters to Micah since the day she discovered she was pregnant. Tonight's entry spilled raw onto the page. "Your father is powerful, but his heart is weak. He doesn't see you. Not yet. But I will fight so one day you never question your worth." She closed the journal, kissed Micah's forehead, and hummed a lullaby her mother had once sung. The baby stirred, blinked his storm-gray eyes, and sighed back into sleep. In a glass tower overlooking the Chicago River, Ethan Cross sat in his penthouse office staring at the skyline. Contracts, stock reports, and expansion deals littered his desk, but his focus drifted to a crumpled photograph on his phone. It wasn't of a deal or a building. It was of Micah. The image had surfaced online, spreading through community groups after Ms. Alvarez showed a volunteer at the food pantry. The boy's smile, his storm-gray eyes, it had caught fire. Hashtags trended: storm eyes, cross-exposed, truth in the eyes, memes side by side of Ethan's childhood photo and Micah's face, a caption, copy-paste. TikToks played clips of Ethan storming out of the hospital, overlaid with Micah's smiling photo. One viral soundbite mocked, "That baby ain't mine," auto-tuned into a remix. Ethan's jaw clenched as he scrolled. The resemblance was undeniable, and the internet agreed. His lawyer, Daniel Moore, leaned back in a leather chair, scrolling on his own tablet. "She's stubborn. Didn't take the first check. Didn't take the second. If she pushes harder, we can make her look unstable. Run a smear campaign. People will believe what we tell them." Ethan rubbed his temple. "And if the press keeps running with this, then we bury her," Daniel said smoothly. "Discredit, destroy. A single mother from the South Side against you? She doesn't stand a chance." Ethan turned back to the window, but the reflection staring back at him wasn't the Titan he was used to seeing. It was a man haunted by the storm-gray eyes of a boy. Janelle bundled Micah in layers and pushed the stroller through icy wind to the community clinic 3 blocks away. Inside, the waiting room hummed with coughs, restless children, and posters offering support for single mothers. Dr. Harris, a black physician in his late 50s with kind eyes, greeted her warmly. "How's our little warrior today?" "He's healthy," Janelle said softly. Then her composure cracked. But his father, he looked right at him and denied him. Hoff said I was lying, and now he won't stop. Dr. Harris leaned back, studying her. "Men like that fear truth more than scandal. But truth doesn't go away, Janelle. It waits." I'm scared, she admitted. Not of him hurting me physically, but he has so much power. I have nothing. You have something he doesn't, Dr. Harris said firmly, tapping a finger against his chest. Conviction. You know who your son is. You know what's right. Don't underestimate that. Her eyes blurred with tears. She nodded. That night she wrote again in her journal, Your father fears the truth. But I don't. You are mine, Micah. You are light, even if he refuses to see it. In his penthouse, Ethan stared at the viral photo again and again. Micah's storm gray eyes burned through his denial. For the first time in decades, Ethan Cross, untouchable billionaire, master of every deal, felt powerless. Not against a competitor, not against regulators, but against the truth staring back at him in the eyes of a child. And in the Bronx-like streets of Southside Chicago, Janelle Carter rocked her son and whispered through tears, The world may deny you, he may deny you, but I never will. The storm was only beginning. Chapter 3. The Viral Storm. By March, Chicago's streets had thawed into slush. Puddles splashed against car tires, the air carried the metallic scent of rain not yet fallen, and the city hummed with the restless rhythm of spring. But in the Southside apartment where Janelle Carter rocked her son to sleep, the season offered little relief. The whispers groaned louder. It started with one photograph. Micah's storm gray eyes sparkling in a shaft of sunlight, his tiny fist curled tight against Ms. Alvarez's shoulder. Janelle had sent it privately to thank her mentor. Somehow, within days, it landed on a community Facebook page. From there, it went everywhere. Hashtags flooded Twitter, Storm Eyes, Cross Exposed, Babygate. TikToks remixed Ethan's infamous hospital line, That baby ain't mine, into auto-tuned songs, some hilarious, others scathing. One video showed a toddler with gray contact lenses lip-syncing Ethan's denial while text popped up. Me looking exactly like my dad while he says I'm adopted. The memes cut sharper than gossip ever could. Side-by-side photos of Ethan's childhood portraits and Micah's baby pictures went viral with captions like Control-C, Control-V. The internet jury had spoken. Micah was Ethan's son. Inside Harper's Diner, Janelle tried to keep her head down and work out, but customers whispered loud enough for her to hear. That's her, right? The one suing Ethan Cross? She's not suing yet. She's just clout chasing. Look at her, working here for tips, but claiming she slept with a billionaire. She's brave if it's true. She's crazy if it's not. Janelle set down a tray of burgers, her hands steady even as heat rose in her chest. She had learned silence was its own kind of defense, but silence didn't protect her phone. Notifications poured in daily, messages from strangers, some supportive, many cruel. Gold digger, keep your legs closed next time. We see you, sis. Stay strong. Don't let him win. Each message left a mark, like graffiti on the walls of her mind. That night, she returned home, peeled off her grease-stained uniform, and sat at the wobbly table while Micah slept in his crib. She opened her journal. They don't know you. They don't know me. But one day they will. You are not his mistake. You are my miracle. She pressed her palm to the paper, whispering into the silence, Truth doesn't need permission. Meanwhile, across the river, Ethan Cross felt the walls of his empire tightening. Cross-Tech headquarters bustled with analysts and advisors, but their voices blurred into static as Ethan scrolled through his phone. Every feed was the same. Micah's photograph, his eyes unmistakable. The boy was a ghost haunting every corner of the internet. Sir, Daniel Moore, his lawyer, said sharply from across the conference table. We need to control the narrative, file a defamation suit, demand a DNA test on our terms, spin it as a scam before it takes root. Ethan's jaw flexed. And if the test proves what we already know? Daniel hesitated. Then we bury it. Money talks. Ethan looked up slowly. For years, burying truth had been his craft. Mergers disguised as rescues, buyouts spun as charity. But this truth refused to stay underground. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Weakness makes you pray. Deny it before it denies you. But what if the weakness wasn't doubt? What if it was denial itself? Ethan stood abruptly. Not yet, he muttered. Give me time. Daniel frowned. Time for what? Ethan didn't answer. It was a Wednesday when Ethan broke his own rule and drove south of the loop. No security, no entourage. His sleek car cut through cracked streets, slowing before the low brick building of the community clinic. Inside, Janelle sat with Micah in her lap, waiting for Dr. Harris to call them in. She hummed softly, rocking him, her voice weary but warm. Then the door opened, and the hum of conversation died. Ethan Cross entered. Even in jeans and a dark coat, his presence electrified the room. Mothers clutched children tighter. A receptionist froze mid-sentence. Whispers surged like wildfire. "That's him. That's the billionaire." Janelle's heart stuttered. She tightened her hold on Micah. "Janelle," Ethan said, his voice low, controlled. Loretta Alvarez, standing at the supply counter, stepped forward like a shield. But Janelle lifted a hand. "I've got this." "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharper than she felt. Ethan's eyes flicked toward the stroller beside her, where Micah squirmed awake, storm gray eyes blinking wide. For a fraction of a second, his mask cracked. "I saw the photo," Ethan said quietly. His tone was not the bark of a CEO, but the rawness of a man caught off guard. "You need to stop putting him online." Janelle's voice rose. "I didn't put him anywhere." "Then why is he everywhere?" Ethan snapped, his mask slamming back in place. "You're trying to destroy me." "Destroy you?" Janelle stood, fury vibrating in her bones. "You did that yourself. You denied him. You denied me. All I did was survive your cruelty." Ethan's aides shifted uncomfortably, but he silenced them with a hand. His gaze locked on Micah, who stared back at him with uncanny stillness. The silence in the room grew so heavy it hurt. Finally, Ethan muttered, almost to himself, "This isn't over." He turned and strode out, his footsteps sharp against the tile. The door slammed. The waiting room exhaled as if it had been holding its breath. Ms. Alvarez touched Janelle's shoulder gently. "Child, you rattled him. Did you see it?" He looked at that boy and couldn't hide it. Janelle's whole body trembled, but he still left. "He left with doubt in his pocket," Ms. Alvarez said firmly, "and doubt, when planted in stone, can crack it wide open." Janelle sank back into her chair, holding Micah close, but her mind replayed every second of Ethan's hesitation, the flicker in his eyes. She clung to it, even as fear wrapped tighter around her chest. Across town that night, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, the city glittering beneath him. He poured whiskey but didn't drink it. He stared at his phone instead, zooming in again and again on Micah's photo until the pixels blurred. His reflection in the glass window merged with the boy's storm gray eyes. For the first time in his life, Ethan Cross whispered into the empty room, "Why can't I stop seeing him?" At the diner the next day, Janelle returned to work, exhausted but steady. Customers stared openly now, whispering louder. One man sneered, "There she is, the liar." Another muttered, "Poor kid, growing up without a dad." Heat seared behind her eyes, but she carried plates with a steady hand. Later that night, she walked home through drizzle, pushing Micah's stroller past flickering streetlights. She whispered fiercely, "They don't know you, they don't know me, but one day they will. You are my truth, Micah, and truth doesn't die." TikTok challenges sprouted. Stash hash storm eyes selfies, where users compared their gray-eyed children to Ethan Cross. Memes flooded Reddit, calling him the denier of the year. News anchors debated his silence, his arrogance, his guilt. For every insult hurled at Janelle, a dozen strangers defended her. The world had chosen sides. And Ethan Cross, billionaire, untouchable, ruthless, found himself hunted not by scandal, but by the undeniable reflection of a child's eyes. Chapter 4, The Proof. By April, the rumor had outgrown its skeleton. What started as a photograph and a handful of mean-spirited comments had become a creature with 1,000 mouths. Podcasts, panel shows, think pieces titled "Can Tech Titans Be Good Dads?" and "The Biology of Denial." Clips of Ethan's line, "That baby ain't mine," looped between weather and sports like a cursed jingle. Even the morning zoo show on 103.1 had a game called Storm or Not, where callers guessed which gray-eyed celebrity babies belonged to which gray-eyed parents. It was tasteless. It was relentless. It was inescapable. Janelle learned how to move in it, chin up, hoodie brim low, stroller pushed like a compass through noise. She stuck to the same routes. Harper's diner to the clinic to Miss Alvarez's place, back to the apartment. She timed Micah's naps to coincide with the walk home so his breathing could be the metronome that steadied hers. On an otherwise ordinary Tuesday, the ordinary ended. A thick cream envelope slid through the slot and glided across the scuffed linoleum like a white fin. She stood with the dish towel in her hand, water dripping from her knuckles, staring. Her name in careful type. Cook County Circuit Court. Her stomach fell like an elevator cut loose. She dried her hands, picked it up, broke the seal. Her eyes leaped to the middle of the page. Order for genetic testing. Petitioning party Cross Ethan L. For a moment, she felt only heat, anger at the audacity. He had stood over her hospital bed and carved her with words, then tried to buy her silence, then let the world rip her apart. Now he wanted proof. A part of her wanted to burn the paper to ash and mail him the soot. Instead, she carried it to the window, where pale light made the words undeniable, and read it again. Miss Alvarez's door opened across the hall. As always, the older woman's timing was witchcraft. You look like you just saw rent go up, Miss Alvarez said, leaning on the doorframe. DNA test, Janelle whispered. Miss Alvarez nodded once. No shock, only the calm of a woman who'd walked the world long enough to be unsurprised by its choices. Let him prove himself wrong. Janelle exhaled. He won't come alone. Then you won't be alone either, Miss Alvarez said and disappeared, reappearing 30 seconds later with a tote bag that contained, as if by prophecy, tissues, an apple, an extra pacifier, a rosary, and a pen that wrote like a dream. Eat the apple, she instructed. Justice requires fiber. Janelle laughed, and the laugh broke something that needed breaking. The clinic on 43rd Street had never seen so many cameras. They gathered like carrion birds on the corner, their lenses glittering, their cords snaking across the sidewalk. News vans idled with their generators chugging, spitting low gray breath. A woman in leopard print heels rehearsed her stand-up into a phone, the very latest from Southside Chicago, where another, in a puffy coat the color of a highlighter, tested the line. Baby with storm gray eyes. 3 times, landing hardest on storm. Inside, the clinic smelled of bleach and orange hand soap. The beige chairs had seen things. Janelle signed her name and retreated to a corner chair, Micah warm against her chest in a sling. Miss Alvarez sat like a sentry, knitting needles, clicking, each stitch a small spell. A hush moved over the room like a long shadow when the door opened. Ethan didn't stride in, he entered, which for him was what passed as humble. A gray sweater instead of a suit, an expression dialed 2 clicks below, impassive. One aide behind him. The aide's eyes skittered across the posters. Free vaccinations, diabetes screenings, parenting groups meet Wednesdays. Ethan saw Micah first, not Janelle. A small intake of breath, barely there, like a man stepping into cold water and flinching before he commits. He moved closer, stopped a pace away. Miss Carter, he said. Mr. Cross, she returned, voice steadier than her blood. They could have been executives beginning a negotiation. Except a baby gurgled between them, and the world had come to listen for the word father. The nurse called them not with ceremony, but with the bored kindness of someone who does this every day. Cross? Carter? And just like that, the circus stayed outside while the act became mundane. Paperwork, consent forms, a quick gloved swab against Micah's cheek, a second swab inside Ethan's. Micah made an offended squeak at the intrusion and then forgot it entirely because the nurse smiled at him with her whole face. Ethan's eyes tracked the tiny movements like he was learning a new language. Easy, the nurse murmured. You're all right, sweetheart. Back in the waiting room, time stretched itself thin. Miss Alvarez handed Ethan a wipe without looking up from her knitting when Micah drooled on his sweater. He accepted it with something that looked, if you squinted, like gratitude. When the receptionist called next, the spell broke, and ordinary clinic life resumed around them. Fevers, questions about insurance cards, a toddler in a dinosaur hoodie refusing to take off sunglasses because he was, in his words, influencing. They left separately, as if choreography might appease the cameras. But they collided again under the awning because the skies had opened and Chicago's rain came hard enough to pin your shirt to your skin. Reporters surged. Mr. Cross, is that your son? Miss Carter, are you seeking a settlement? How much money would make you go away? Do you regret? Do you admit? Is it true you? Ethan raised an arm toward the cameras, not a warding off, not a wave, a stop. For a beat, it worked. He looked at Micah, and the moment stretched. The city noise faded, the rain softened, and something in Ethan's face, hard lines carved by control, by deals and punishments and winning, softened too. It wasn't much. A slackening at the corners of his eyes, a tremor at the mouth, a human look wearing a billionaire's clothes. The cameras caught it. 1 frame, then a dozen, then 100. They would become the most replayed milliseconds of his career. He got into his car, Janelle into hers. And the world inhaled to wait. Waiting is an art and a science. Janelle did it with chores, with lists, with tiny rituals. She cleaned the kitchen with the kind of zeal that would have made Ethan grin if he were the kind of man who grinned about lemon oil, countertops until they squeaked, the stovetop until it flashed back her reflection. She reorganized Micah's dresser, folding the onesies by color like a retail display, which was ridiculous and therefore calming. She kept working her shifts at Harper's. The regulars learned to tip big or shut up. Teenagers came in after school, pretending to order fries just to watch her like she might do something heroically viral. One girl left a note under her ketchup bottle. "You're brave." From Kayla, Table 5. Janelle put it in her wallet with the ultrasound photo and a receipt from the night she bought her first pair of maternity jeans. With the cameras posted outside the building, Miss Alvarez deployed neighborhood counterintelligence. One day, she let the reporters chase her to the wrong bodega by making a show of debating the merits of cilantro like it contained state secrets. Another day, she stalled a news crew by telling an epic saga about her late husband's hatred of weather people. He said they lie professionally, she confided warmly to a mic whose light flickered, and then he'd go outside and ask the sky who it voted for. 10 minutes later, the sky voted to rain on the cameraman's fresh fade. In the penthouse he hadn't yet abandoned, Ethan waited the only way he knew how, with work and with nothing. He stayed late at the office, then went home and didn't turn on any lights. He found his father's photograph in a closet, stern jaw, those same gray eyes, and took it out, then put it back, as if an old picture might scold him. He stopped pouring whiskey he didn't intend to drink. He ate things he didn't taste. He imagined the envelope arriving at Janelle's door and what she'd look like holding it. He imagined the lab techs, the machines, the indifferent math of probability. Daniel texted twice a day with legalese and strategies. Ethan answered with thumbs-up emojis, then stopped answering at all. On the morning the results came, the mail hit Janelle's floor with a sound she would remember forever. Thin, decisive, nothing like thunder, and somehow exactly like it. She held the envelope for 3 breaths. She opened it on the 4th. The words were just ink. The meaning was a detonation. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. She didn't sit. She steadied herself against the table and let the paper press into her chest the way she had pressed Micah to her chest in the hospital. Her mind didn't immediately fill with victory. It flooded with quiet. The kind that comes after sirens, after shouting, after someone stops running. She lifted Micah from the play yard and kissed his soft cheek until he squirmed. "They can't deny you anymore," she whispered into his hair. "The truth is yours now." By noon, the internet had digested, chewed, and metabolized the news into 1,000 reactions. DNA confirms Cross's father. Storm eyes were right. What we owe women who tell truths we don't want. Some told jokes that landed like feathers. Some wrote curses like bricks thrown at windows. Strangers Venmo'd Janelle small amounts with notes like diapers fund and for Miss A's soup pot, and once $7 for being a queen. She accepted the love, declined the pity, blocked the bile. Harper's Diner erupted in applause when the TV over the counter cut to a breaking banner. Janelle almost cried right there by the coffee maker, but she didn't. She poured decaf for the church ladies from down the street because they were already jittery on conviction. Ethan received his envelope in an office not his own because that's what happens when the mess outgrows a man. He becomes a guest inside his life. He read it once, then again, then a third time as if the numbers would change if he stared hard enough. The room seemed to tilt, not because the truth surprised him, but because it didn't. The shock belonged to the part of him that had fed on denial like sugar. The rest of him, quieter, older, haunted, exhaled a breath he didn't remember learning to hold. Daniel burst in, face flushed with either outrage or cardio. "It's out. It's everywhere. We move now. Draft statements, threaten suits, negotiate." "Stop," Ethan said. Daniel's mouth snapped shut. He had been with Ethan long enough to recognize that tone, the one used when buying companies, not when escorting feelings. "You don't understand," Daniel tried again, softening. "This is existential." "It is," Ethan agreed, and surprised himself by not meaning the company. He stood. "I'll speak. No lawsuits. No burying. No more lying." Daniel blinked. "You can't just walk into a press conference and—" "I can," Ethan said, and for the first time in months, the certainty that filled his chest didn't taste like arrogance. It tasted like water. The press conference wasn't elegant. It was arranged by 3 assistants in a conference room that looked like every other conference room. Carpet squares, a too-clean podium, a flag that needed steaming. The cameras packed the back wall like storm clouds. A murmur rolled through them when Ethan entered, not because he looked like a man in control, but because he didn't. He gripped the sides of the podium like it steadied him. The room clicked and hummed. Microphones bloomed. "The DNA results," he said, the first words catching in his throat and then settling, "have confirmed what many suspected. I am the father of Micah Carter." The name landed in the air and changed the weather. "For too long," he continued, and his voice didn't boom. He let it be human. "I denied the truth. I let fear and arrogance blind me to my responsibility. I caused harm to Janelle Carter and to our son. I am sorry." Reporters didn't interrupt because they sensed they might miss something unrepeatable if they did. "I cannot undo what I did," he said. "But I can stop lying. I can show up. I can ask forgiveness I may never deserve. I can be a father." He didn't cry. He didn't posture. He didn't offer a settlement number. He didn't promise to marry a woman he had humiliated. He didn't put the company ahead of the boy or the boy ahead of the woman. He just said what was true, and for once, truth didn't need a bodyguard. Questions exploded as soon as he stepped away. "Mr. Cross, are you stepping down? Will you pay child support? Are you getting joint custody? Did your board demand this? Are you in love with Miss Carter?" The last one was tabloid gold, ridiculous and shiny. He didn't answer. He left the room with the same steady knot stride he had walked in. Across the city, the press conference spilled into living rooms and phones and the TV above the diner. Harper's fell silent in a way Janelle had never seen it. Even the grill seemed to sizzle under its breath instead of shout. He said Micah's name, she thought, and the tears that didn't fall at the envelope finally burned their way out at a man speaking 3 syllables into a microphone. "Miss," Alvarez slid onto the stool beside the register, warming her hands around a coffee she hadn't ordered because the counter girl had learned what to make. "When?" He said it where the whole world could hear. Miss Alvarez murmured, eyes on the screen. "Words aren't bread, Mika, but sometimes they are the only thing you can swallow before you get to the meal." Janelle huffed a damp laugh. "That's your way of saying I can be glad and still be mad." "Exactamente," Miss Alvarez said, tapping the counter as if she'd placed down a winning domino. The customers clapped again when the anchor cut back in. A few came to the counter to tell Janelle they were proud. One woman who had watched Janelle's belly grow and who always asked for extra pickles without apologizing, squeezed her hand and said, "I raised my boy alone. If he shows up, good. But you showed up first. That matters." It did. It mattered more than hot takes and hashtags. It mattered more than a billionaire's mea culpa. That night, when the clatter of dishes finally died and the apartment quieted around them, Janelle pulled a journal from beneath the couch and wrote by the light of the cheapest lamp Target sold. He said your name. He said the truth. The city heard it. The world heard it. I heard it. It doesn't heal everything, Micah. It doesn't stitch what he tore. But it is a beginning, and beginnings are what we make of them. I promise you this. I will never let his new truth erase the old pain, and I will never let the old pain erase the new truth. Micah slept on, his breath small and even, one fist against his cheek like he had fallen asleep mid-argument with the sky. The blowback was immediate, as blowback always is. Some celebrated Ethan as if truth-telling were a badge of heroism instead of an overdue bill. Others called the apology performative, a business strategy in contrition's clothing. Shareholders panicked. Life coaches podcasted. A famous comedian compared denial to a software bug. Patch the dadware, dude. At Crosstech, a board member sent Ethan a spreadsheet that valued sincerity at a negative $2.4 billion over 5 years. Ethan replied with a single sentence, "My son is not a line item." Daniel called 3 times and finally texted, "You are impossible," which Ethan didn't disagree with. He drove with no destination and discovered, much to his surprise and everyone else's, that the car could point south as easily as north. He parked 2 blocks from Janelle's building and sat there with the engine off, hands on the wheel, a man who had lit a match and now had to decide what to burn and what to warm. He didn't go in. Showing up unannounced felt like old power wearing new clothes. He went home, the one with the boxes stacked like a skyline inside, and stood at the window. The city didn't know him any better than it had that morning, but he knew himself a little more, which was worse and better in equal measure. 2 days later, a knock at Janelle's door came in daylight, not dusk. She looked through the peephole, saw no camera light, and opened to find a woman in a navy dress holding a clipboard. "Miss Carter? I'm with Child and Family Services. Don't worry," the woman added quickly when the words turned Janelle's bones cold. "Not that kind of visit. Mr. Cross contacted us. She flipped a page, requested parenting resources for himself and asked that we offer you anything you might want as well. Co-parenting classes, counseling, legal guidance, all pro bono." Janelle blinked. "He did what?" The woman's smile was small and practical. "Sometimes the people who have the most to prove try to prove it. You get to decide what you want." Janelle's first instinct was no. Her second was yes. The truest one was a shrug, maybe. She took the pamphlets. The woman left behind a refrigerator magnet with a phone number and a cartoon bear wearing a cape. "Strong families," it said in bubble letters. Miss Alvarez snorted later, "That bear needs a tamale," but she stuck it to the fridge anyway. That evening, Ethan texted for the first time in months without a lawyer seat, "I won't presume. If you ever want to talk about schedules, I'll come to you. If you don't, I'll wait." She stared at the softness of it, the absence of demand, the decency of offering nothing but patience, and typed, then backspaced, then typed again. "You can come by tomorrow at 10. Don't be late. 3 dots, a pause, I won't be." The city likes its redemption arcs dramatic, parades, fireworks, neon. The next morning, redemption looked like a billionaire at a broken intercom, pressing 3B and clearing his throat before he said, "It's Ethan." It looked like him climbing 3 flights because the elevator was older than both of them and had decided it was on strike until its demands for a new cable were met. It looked like him tapping lightly so as not to wake a nap. He did not earn the right to disturb. Janelle opened the door. The apartment smelled like coffee and clean laundry. Micah squealed at the sight of the tall man who'd stared into his face beneath a clinic awning as if seeing the moon for the first time. Janelle stepped back. Ethan stepped in. He took in the space like a man memorizing an emergency exit. Where is safety? Where is danger? Where is the thing that matters most? No entourage, no gifts he could hand over like penance. A paper sack from the corner grocery, bananas, a jar of baby food, a ridiculous attempt at normalcy. "Hi," he said to Micah, and his voice had that stutter of awe she remembered from the hospital, except softer now, less like a man avoiding a cliff, and more like a man walking toward his own life. Micah reached for his face like it was a new toy. Ethan laughed, a quiet, uneducated sound, the first word of a language he hadn't been allowed to speak growing up. Janelle watched the sound pull something tight in her chest and loosen it. "This doesn't change the months you denied him," she said, not unkindly and not as a test, a line in the dirt that marked where her heart lived. "I know," he said. "I'm not here because a test told me something. I'm here because I ran out of ways to lie to myself." The baby grabbed a fistful of Ethan's sweater. Ethan winced, then kept still, letting himself be owned. The TV, muted, rolled a chyron about his apology. The internet was already argue-splaining his motives. A panel of people who had never met him or her said the word authentic so many times it lost its shape. Miss Alvarez, from her customary supervisory chair by the window, tilted her head at the sight of Ethan's face softened by baby spit. "Bueno," she said to no one, to everyone. "Now we see if the man can do Tuesday. Anyone can do Sunday." The 3 of them turned, as if to obey a stage direction, to look at Micah. He sneezed, then smiled at the astonished gratitude of being clapped for having a nose. Janelle felt it then, the smallest permission to imagine a future that wasn't only defense. It didn't erase the past, it didn't absolve him, it didn't make the world kind. But it made a door where there had been a wall, and she had the key. She would not fling it open. She would open it an inch, then another, listening for the footsteps on the other side. Ethan looked from the boy to her and back, and something like a promise moved across his face without needing words. Outside, the city kept thundering, deliveries, sirens, arguments about parking spaces and God. Inside, a man who had once weaponized silence learned to be quiet in a different way. Inside, a woman who had survived public humiliation without breaking allowed herself a sliver of rest. Inside, a child who had been a scandal became what he had always been, a person, warm and loud and full of the future. When Ethan finally stood to leave, after an hour of the complicated choreography of passing a baby back and forth without bruising pride or ribs, he paused at the door. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said. 10. "Then be back," Janelle said. He nodded. "I will." He stepped into the hallway. Miss Alvarez rose and locked the door behind him with a click that sounded like punctuation. "Fiber," she reminded, pointing at the bananas he'd brought. "Justice is a digestive process." Janelle laughed and cried at the same time, which is how justice sometimes arrives. She picked up Micah and rocked him and whispered the sentence she had written so many times that it had become both prayer and weather report. "You are not a mistake," she said into his hair. "You are my reason." And in another part of the city, a man stood at a crosswalk waiting for the light to change, the rain beating on his sweater, his life dividing itself into before and after. He said nothing this time, not even inside his head. He looked up at the gray Chicago sky and did the thing he had never done, not once in all his years of winning. He let the truth carry him across. Chapter 5. The Long Road. Chicago's summer arrived like a dare. The streets shimmered with heat, the L's screeched on tracks that seemed to bake under the sun, and the air carried the tang of hot dogs and exhaust. Janelle Carter learned to dress Micah in onesies, light enough to keep him cool, but tough enough to survive the stains of peach puree and sidewalk chalk. And now, most mornings at 10 sharp, a knock at her door announced the thing she never imagined. Ethan Cross, a billionaire turned father in training, showing up in jeans and sneakers, sometimes with bags of groceries, sometimes with nothing but nerves. He came without bodyguards, without lawyers, without his old aura of untouchable arrogance. Instead, he came with diapers under his arm, with juice boxes he didn't know how to open, with a determination that surprised even him. It didn't make him forgiven. Not yet, but it made him present. The first morning, Ethan arrived clutching a paper bag from the corner bodega, bananas, peanut butter, 2 cans of formula. He held them like evidence. "You can put them on the counter," Janelle said, arms folded. Micah squealed when he saw him. Ethan bent awkwardly, the tall man folding like bad origami, and lifted his son. Micah immediately latched a tiny hand onto his father's nose. Ethan winced but didn't pull away. "Firm grip," he muttered. "Future negotiator." Miss Alvarez, knitting by the window like the guardian she was, snorted. "Future linebacker, or chess champion, depends who shows up to practice." Janelle couldn't help the laugh that slipped out, though she quickly masked it. Over the next days, Ethan's visits stitched themselves into the fabric of their lives. He learned how to hold a bottle at the right angle, how to pat a back until burps sounded like tiny trombones, how to assemble a stroller without swearing, though he failed at that part more often than not. One afternoon, while Micah napped, Ethan stared at the folded laundry on the couch. "Can I help?" he asked. "You? Fold?" Janelle raised an eyebrow. "I built a multi-billion-dollar company." Ethan said, "I can fold a t-shirt." He could not, but he tried, and the result was such a mangled mess that even Miss Alvarez chuckled. "Mijo, the shirt didn't insult you. No need to wrestle it." Ethan grinned sheepishly, something no one in the financial press would have believed. "I'll keep practicing." For all the quiet progress in that apartment, the city outside remained merciless. Paparazzi lurked at the bodega, outside Harper's Diner, near the church pantry. Headlines still flared. "Cross the liar. Cross the father. Cross the fallen king." Janelle felt their weight every time she pushed Micah's stroller down cracked sidewalks. One evening, a group of teenagers on the corner laughed too loudly. "That's her," one muttered. "The maid who trapped Cross." Another sneered. "Girl's a walking payday." Janelle clenched the stroller handle until her knuckles whitened, but she didn't stop walking. That night, she whispered into Micah's hair, "They don't know us, but one day they'll see. Not because of him, because of you." Meanwhile, Ethan's empire crumbled. The board stripped him of titles. Investors whispered about exile. News anchors speculated on his fall from grace. For once, Ethan didn't fight. When asked if he planned to sue tabloids or silence critics, he replied with a phrase that stunned even his former lawyer. "My son is not a scandal. He's a child. He doesn't need me to win a PR war. He needs me to change." It was Miss Alvarez who finally suggested the park. "Babies need sun, and so do you two," she said, swatting Ethan's shoulder with a dish towel when he hesitated. Don't be afraid of sidewalks. People will talk whether you hide or not. So one Saturday, Janelle found herself walking beside Ethan through Washington Park, the stroller rattling over uneven pavement. The summer air smelled of grilled corn and cut grass. Kids shrieked on the swings. Ethan pushed the stroller half the time, awkward but determined. When they reached the grass, he lifted Micah high above his head, spinning him gently. Micah shrieked with laughter, drool flying in the sun. The sound cracked something inside Janelle. She had dreamed of this, a father chasing his son through grass, catching him before he toppled, carrying him on his shoulders. She had dreamed it even when she told herself not to. She sat on the bench, arms crossed, eyes suspiciously damp. A few people stared, a couple whispered, a teen snapped a photo. But for the first time, Janelle didn't care. Micah's laughter drowned it all. Of course, peace couldn't last. The next week, as they left the park, a reporter broke through the crowd, microphone shoved forward, camera light blinding. "Mr. Cross, do you admit you love your son?" The question stopped Ethan cold. He looked at the camera, at the woman holding the mic, at Janelle clutching the stroller. Then he looked down at Micah, who blinked up at him with storm gray certainty. "Yes," Ethan said, voice steady. "I love him. And nothing you write, nothing you say will change that." The words echoed across the park, across the cameras, across Janelle's guarded heart. That night, Ethan returned Micah's favorite blanket he'd accidentally carried home. "You didn't have to drive across town for this," Janelle said, holding the soft cloth. "Yes, I did," Ethan replied simply, "because I promised that I'd show up." She stared at him for a long moment, searching for cracks in the sincerity. "You can't erase the past," she said. "You can't undo what you did to me." "I know." His voice was quiet, raw, "but I can live differently now. I can teach him that love is stronger than fear, something I never learned until I looked into his eyes." Janelle's throat tightened. She didn't answer. But when he left, she opened her journal and wrote, "Your father is trying. I don't know if it will last. But today, he showed up, and sometimes showing up is the bravest step of all." Weeks blurred into routine. Ethan came in the mornings, left at night. He learned to chop onions without cursing too much. He fixed the leaky faucet with more determination than skill. He sat on the floor stacking blocks with Micah, only to watch his son gleefully knock them over. And Janelle, slowly, cautiously, began to breathe without the constant weight of rage. She remembered every cruel word. She remembered the hospital humiliation. Forgiveness wasn't ready. But she noticed the difference: consistency. One night, she asked Miss Alvarez the question that gnawed at her. "Do men like him really change?" Miss Alvarez set her knitting down. "Change is a long road, Mia. Some walk it steady, some stumble, some never start, but you'll know if he's walking it. Your heart will tell you, even if your mind still doubts." Meanwhile, Ethan faced his own test. The board demanded distance, demanded denial, demanded he salvage Crosstech's reputation. Investors threatened lawsuits. For the first time in his career, Ethan didn't bargain. He stood in the glass conference room staring at charts and furious faces and said simply, "I am a father. That comes first. If that costs me everything else, so be it." Silence fell. Shock rippled. The titan they had once feared for his ruthlessness now terrified them more with sincerity. That night, Ethan didn't return to the penthouse. He drove straight to Janelle's building. When she opened the door, he stood there soaked from summer rain, hair plastered, cardboard box in his arms. "What's this?" she asked. He glanced down. Inside, children's books, Micah's blanket, a framed photo of his late mother. "I'm leaving the penthouse," Ethan said simply. "It doesn't mean anything to me anymore. This does." Her breath caught. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity. A billionaire discarding marble floors for peeling paint, but his voice carried truth, unvarnished. "You can't erase the past," yeah, she warned. "I'm not trying to erase it," he said. "I'm trying to build something new, if you'll let me." That evening, Ethan sat on the floor reading Goodnight Moon in a voice that stumbled over rhymes but carried warmth. Micah clapped at the wrong moments, utterly delighted. Janelle stood in the doorway, arms crossed, heart tight. She whispered almost against her will, "Maybe. Maybe he could change. Maybe he couldn't. But maybe was more than she had ever allowed herself before." And in that small South Side apartment, amid chipped paint and secondhand furniture, hope, fragile, stubborn, dangerous, began to stir. Chapter 6. The Cracks and the Cement. Summer pressed down on Chicago until the sidewalk shimmered and even the pigeons looked exhausted. The air buzzed with sirens, ice cream trucks, and the endless chatter of a city that never let anyone forget they were being watched. For Janelle Carter, life was suddenly lived on two stages, the private one in her cramped apartment, and the public one she never auditioned for. By July, Ethan's visits were no longer a novelty. He showed up every morning at 10, sometimes 5 minutes early, never late. He arrived in jeans that still looked too new, t-shirts that tried too hard not to be designer, and sneakers he clearly bought because Miss Alvarez told him loafers were a crime against fatherhood. And yet, despite his attempts at blending in, the street outside was lined with cameras. Reporters yelled questions every time he approached. "Mr. Cross, are you moving in? Janelle, are you getting married? Will Micah inherit the company?" One man shouted crudely, "How much is your kid worth now?" Ethan's jaw would lock. His fists would clench. But Janelle's hand on the stroller handle reminded him, "Don't explode. Just walk inside." It was exhausting. By the time the door clicked shut behind them, all three, Janelle, Ethan, and Micah, were carrying the weight of the world's judgment. Inside, the work of becoming a father continued. Ethan insisted on learning how to cook dinner. Janelle, half amused and half appalled, let him. The first attempt, spaghetti. He dumped the pasta into cold water, then stared at it like it had betrayed him. "Boil first," Janelle said, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Right," Ethan muttered, cheeks flushed. He burned the sauce. He dropped a fork into the pot. He swore under his breath until Micah imitated him, babbling a baby swear that made Miss Alvarez nearly choke on her tea with laughter. By the end of the night, the kitchen looked like a battlefield. But they ate the spaghetti, burnt edges, watery noodles, sauce that tasted vaguely of metal. Micah smeared it across his face, delighted. Janelle shook her head. "He thinks you're a genius." Ethan smiled, almost shy. "Then I'm keeping my day job." But his day job wasn't waiting patiently. Crosstech's board held emergency meetings. Shareholders fumed. Lawyers circled. Ethan's decision to prioritize his son over the company was painted as weakness in glossy magazines and investor briefings. "Resign now," one board member demanded in a glass conference room overlooking the Chicago River. "Your scandal has cost us billions." Ethan stood, the skyline blazing behind him, and said evenly, "If being a father costs billions, then so be it. Vote me out, but don't expect me to pretend my son doesn't exist." Silence followed. Not admiration, not respect, just shock. The man they had feared for years wasn't ruthless anymore. He was worse, principled, and principles made people nervous. Back in the apartment, Ethan's resolve was tested in smaller, messier ways. One humid night, Micah spiked a fever. His cheeks flushed, his cries cracked. Janelle panicked. Memories of the hospital, of being dismissed, of standing alone in sterile halls rushed back. Before she could call, Ethan was already at the door, hair disheveled, eyes wild. "What happened?" "He's burning up," Janelle said, voice shaking. Ethan scooped Micah into his arms, his confidence in boardrooms evaporating into raw terror. "Hospital? Clinic," Janelle said. "Dr. Harris knows him." They bundled him into the stroller. Ethan pushed, running red lights on foot, ignoring the cameras that swarmed. In the waiting room, he paced like a caged animal until Dr. Harris emerged with a calm smile. "Teething fever," the doctor said. "Uncomfortable, but not dangerous." Ethan sagged against the wall, tears he didn't bother hiding sliding down his face. He kissed Micah's damp forehead. "Don't scare me like that again," he whispered. Janelle watched him, her own relief mixing with something sharper. For the first time, she saw him not as a billionaire, not as a man who denied, but as a father terrified to lose his child. Of course, history didn't vanish. One evening, after Micah was asleep, Janelle turned to Ethan in the kitchen. Her arms were crossed, her face set. "Why are you really here, Ethan?" she asked. "Is this guilt? Is this a performance for the cameras? Or do you actually want to be a father?" He stared at her, stunned. Then his shoulders sagged. "I don't know how to be a father," he admitted. "I never had an example worth following. My own father believed fear was the only way to raise a son. He thought love was weakness, and I became him." Janelle's throat tightened. Ethan's voice cracked. "When I denied Micah, I wasn't just denying you. I was denying the boy I used to be, the one who wanted someone to hold him and never got it. I can't undo what I did, but I can choose differently now." His words hung in the air like fragile glass. Janelle didn't answer. She turned back to the stove, stirring beans and rice, but her hands trembled. The following Sunday, Miss Alvarez dragged them to church. Community doesn't end at your front door, she declared. And if he wants to prove he's staying, let him walk where people see him. So they did. The three of them walked through the South Side streets, paparazzi trailing, neighbors watching from stoops. Ethan carried Micah the entire way, ignoring the shouts, ignoring the flashbulbs. Inside the church, the congregation turned, whispers rippling. Loretta Johnson, the pantry director, raised her chin and nodded once, proud. They sat in the pew. Ethan's voice, awkward but steady, joined the hymns. Micah clapped at all the wrong moments, earning chuckles from old ladies in flowered hats. Afterward, as they stepped outside, a reporter shouted, "Mr. Cross, do you admit you love your son?" "Do you know what it feels like?" She cut him off, her voice shaking with rage. "To hold him every night, knowing the world thinks you can buy him out of my arms? Do you know what it feels like to hear strangers whisper that I don't deserve my own son?" Tears burned her eyes. "You humiliated me once. I survived it. But if you try to take him, Ethan, I'll burn the world down before I let you win." For a moment, silence. Then Ethan stepped closer, his own eyes wet. "I don't want to win," he whispered. "I just want to stay." Her chest heaved. She didn't answer. The very next day, Ethan did something no one expected. He called a press conference, not in a glass tower, not in a luxury hotel, but on the steps of the Southside Community Center where Janelle volunteered. Microphones bristled, cameras flashed, reporters shouted. Ethan stood tall, but his voice was steady, stripped of the polish that once dazzled Wall Street. "There's been speculation about custody," he said. "Let me make this clear. I am not seeking to take Micah from his mother. Janelle Carter has raised him with strength, dignity, and love. She fought for him when I denied him. She carried the truth when I buried it. She is not just his mother. She is his anchor. And I will never, ever try to take that away." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some reporters dropped their pens. Ethan continued, his voice breaking. "If I have any role in his life, it will be because she allows it. Because she believes I've earned it. Not because I bought it. Not because I demanded it. Because I showed up." The footage aired nationwide. For the first time, public opinion shifted. Not fully, not cleanly, but enough. Headlines read, "Crossbows to Love. Billionaire surrenders control." In Janelle's apartment, watching the broadcast, tears streamed down her face. That evening, Ethan knocked softly. Janelle opened the door, her eyes red. "Why?" she asked. "Why say that? You didn't have to." He looked at her, exhaustion etched in every line. "Because it's true. Because you're right. Money doesn't fix this. Power doesn't fix this. Only presence does. And if the only way to prove it is to kneel in front of the world, then I'll kneel." Janelle stared at him for a long time. Then she whispered, "You broke me, Ethan." "I know. You left me humiliated, alone, pregnant with a child you called a mistake." "I know." His voice cracked, "and I will carry that shame forever." Her eyes burned. "So why do I want to believe you?" "Because," he said softly, "you've always been braver than me." Silence. Heavy. Fragile. Then Micah toddled out of the bedroom, clutching his blanket, storm gray eyes wide. He stumbled toward Ethan, arms outstretched. Ethan bent low, scooped him up, and held him close. Micah laid his head against his father's chest with complete trust. Janelle's throat tightened. Maybe, just maybe, the cracks were starting to fill. Later that night, after Ethan left, Janelle opened her journal. "Tonight he stood in front of the world and gave me back my dignity. He said what I've waited months to hear, that I was never wrong, that you were never a mistake. I don't know if forgiveness is here yet, but maybe it's close." She closed the journal, kissed Micah's forehead, and whispered, "One day you'll know. Your father broke me, but tonight, for the first time, I saw him start to build me back." Chapter 9. The Final Test. By November, Chicago had traded its humid grip for brittle winds that rattled through alleyways and left the sidewalks slick with frost. The skyline shimmered cold and metallic, the river gray as iron. Thanksgiving lights twinkled weakly in storefronts, but inside Janelle Carter's apartment, warmth reigned. The radiator hissed. Micah giggled as Ethan Cross crawled on all fours across the living room floor, pretending to be a horse while Miss Alvarez cackled from her chair. Janelle stood at the stove, stirring chili, her face softened by the glow of lamplight. It felt almost ordinary until the phone rang. Ethan stepped outside to answer. When he returned, his face was pale, his jaw tight. Who was it? Janelle asked, sensing the shift. The board, Ethan said, voice low. They want me back. Janelle froze, wooden spoon in hand. They're offering me the CEO seat again, he continued. Crosstech is crumbling without me. They said I could have it all back. And, Janelle's voice was careful, but her heart pounded. They want conditions. Ethan swallowed hard. They want me to distance myself from you, from Micah. They say the scandal is poison. If I come back, it has to be clean. No baggage. The words slammed into the room like broken glass. Baggage! Janelle repeated, her voice trembling with fury. That's what we are to you? Baggage? No. Ethan's eyes flashed. Not to me. I told them no. I told them I wouldn't do it. Then why do you look like you're bleeding? Janelle whispered, because he was. That night, after Micah was asleep, Ethan lingered by the window, staring at the city lights. Janelle sat at the table, arms crossed, waiting. Do you want to go back? She asked finally. His throat tightened. Part of me does. At least you're honest, she muttered bitterly. Ethan turned, his eyes raw. Janelle, I built that empire from nothing. Every brick, every contract, every sleepless night, it was me. It was my father's voice in my head telling me I had to be untouchable. And now they're dangling it in front of me, saying I can have it all if I just... He broke off, choking on the words. If you just erase us, Janelle finished coldly. Silence filled the room. You can't serve two gods, Ethan, she whispered. Power or presence. You can't have both. That night, sleep evaded him. He saw flashes of marble floors, gold elevators, the sterile glass walls of the penthouse. He heard his father's voice. Weakness destroys you. Never let anyone see it. Then he saw Micah's storm gray eyes, wide and unyielding. He heard his son's giggle as he toppled block towers. He remembered Janelle's voice. Protection isn't control. It's showing up when it's messy. He woke in a sweat, staring at the ceiling of his rented apartment. For the first time, he asked himself, if I walk back into that boardroom, what am I teaching my son? 2 days later, Crosstech held a press event in a downtown hotel ballroom. The board expected Ethan to return triumphant. They leaked whispers to the press. The king is back. Janelle watched the broadcast on Miss Alvarez's tiny TV, Micah bouncing on her knee, her stomach twisted. The cameras flashed as Ethan stepped to the podium. The room buzzed with anticipation. He cleared his throat. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. The board has asked me to return as CEO, he said. They offered me everything I once thought I wanted. Power, prestige, control. Reporters leaned forward. But I am not the man I once was, Ethan continued. I used to believe strength meant denial, that love was weakness, that admitting fault was failure. I was wrong. Strength is standing by your son even when the world tells you to run. Strength is showing up for the woman you once humiliated and saying, I was wrong. Strength is love. Gasps rippled. Cameras clicked furiously. So my answer is no, Ethan said firmly. I will not come back. Not if it means erasing them. My family is not baggage. They are my anchor. If that costs me everything else, then so be it. The ballroom erupted in chaos, reporters shouting, board members fuming, investors storming out. But Ethan didn't flinch. On the south side, Janelle's hand flew to her mouth. Tears blurred her vision. Miss Alvarez whispered, Ay Dios. He chose. Ethan arrived at the apartment that evening, exhausted but lighter than she had ever seen him. They hate me, he admitted, collapsing onto the couch. But for the first time in years, I don't hate myself. Janelle studied him for a long moment. Then she sat beside him, her voice quiet. You chose us. I'll keep choosing you, he said. His eyes shimmered. Every day, if you'll let me. For the first time since Micah's birth, Janelle let herself lean against him. Not fully, not freely, but enough. Micah toddled into the room, clutching his blanket. He climbed onto Ethan's lap, storm gray eyes bright. Ethan kissed the boy's head. Janelle rested her hand over both of them. And in that small apartment, with chili simmering and the radiator hissing, something impossible began to grow. Not perfection, not erasure of the past, but the fragile cement of trust. That night, Janelle opened her journal. Today, he chose. Not power, not empire, us. I don't know if forgiveness is here yet, but hope is, and maybe that's enough for now. One day, Micah will know his father stood in front of the world and said we were worth more than a kingdom, and that will matter more than any crown he ever wore. She closed the book, kissed her son goodnight, and whispered into the quiet, We are not invisible anymore. Chapter 10, The New Beginning. Winter returned to Chicago with a kind of bite that forced everyone into coats too thin, scarves too worn, and hopes too fragile. The South Side streets glistened with frost. Windows flickered with Christmas lights strung by tired hands. The year was ending, and for Janelle Carter, so was a chapter of her life. Ethan Cross had chosen. He had stood before the world and said no to power, no to the empire that once defined him. But choosing didn't mean the story was over. For Janelle, trust was still a door half shut, forgiveness a shadow in the corner. It was time to find out if he could keep the promise he made. Not with speeches, not with money, but with presence. December brought the neighborhood festival. The community center hung paper stars in the windows. Street vendors sold tamales and hot chocolate that steamed against the frigid air. A stage was erected where children sang off-key carols, and parents clapped like they were Broadway stars. Janelle hesitated to go. Too many eyes, too many whispers. But Miss Alvarez was relentless. Your boy deserves to see joy, Mija, not just survival. So Janelle bundled Micah in his puffy coat and wool hat, braced herself for the cold, and stepped into the throng. She didn't expect Ethan to be there, but he was. No suit, no entourage, just him in a simple jacket, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate, one already spilling over the edge. Micah squealed the moment he saw him, arms outstretched. Ethan scooped him up, balancing cocoa with practiced clumsiness. Thought you might need this, Ethan said, offering Janelle the second cup. His breath clouded in the air. His eyes were steady. She took it, hesitating. You keep showing up. That's the plan, he said softly. Later that night, as the festival lights blinked, a man in a sharp coat approached. Janelle recognized him immediately. Martin, Ethan's former lawyer, the same man who once told him to bury her. He smirked, ignoring Janelle entirely. Ethan, you've made your point. You're a family man now. Very touching, but you don't have to live like this. There are investors willing to back you. New ventures, clean ventures. You could rebuild. Ethan stiffened. And the catch? Martin's smile was thin, the same as always. No baggage, no scandal, no maid with a child dragging your name down. The words sliced through the night like shards of ice. Janelle's stomach dropped. She braced for Ethan to falter. But Ethan didn't flinch, right? He shifted Micah higher in his arms, turned to face Martin fully, and said in a voice that carried over the crowd, "This is my son. This is his mother. They are not baggage. They are my life. If you can't see that, then you don't belong in mine." Gasps rose from the people around them. Someone clapped. Then another. Within seconds, the crowd was buzzing, not with whispers of scandal, but with murmurs of respect. Martin's face darkened. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," Ethan said, his jaw set. "But I won't regret them." And with that, he walked away, Janelle and Micah beside him. Back at the apartment, after Micah was asleep, Janelle confronted him. "You could have had it all back tonight," she whispered. "Money, power, the empire, and you walked away. For us." Ethan's voice cracked. "Not for you, with you, that's the difference. I used to think I could choose power and family, but tonight I understood. Family isn't a choice, it's the only thing." Janelle's throat tightened. Her anger, her hurt, her fear, all of it pressed against her ribs, begging to be released. "You broke me, Ethan," she said, tears spilling freely now. "You left me to raise him alone. You made me feel like nothing." "I know," Ethan whispered, his own eyes wet. "And I will never forgive myself for that. But if you let me, I will spend the rest of my life proving you are everything." The words cracked something deep inside her. For the first time, she let the walls fall. She stepped into his arms, trembling, and let herself cry against his chest. He held her, not as a billionaire, not as a man trying to fix things, but as someone finally willing to stay in the mess. Christmas dawned gray but warm inside the apartment. Micah woke to a tree decorated with mismatched ornaments, some borrowed, some handmade. Ethan had helped string the lights, though half blinked at the wrong time. Micah tore at wrapping paper with glee. His gifts weren't extravagant. A toy truck, a picture book, a soft blanket, but each one was chosen with care. Ethan sat on the floor, laughing as Micah shoved the truck at him. Janelle watched, her heart swelling and breaking at once. Later, when Micah napped, she gave Ethan a small box. Inside was a photograph. Micah on his first birthday, storm gray eyes shining, cake smeared across his cheeks. "I wanted you to have this," she said quietly. "So you never forget what you almost missed." Ethan's hands shook as he held it. His voice was thick. "I'll never forget. Not again." That night, Janelle opened her journal for what felt like the last time. "You were born in silence, Micah. Born into doubt, into denial, into whispers that tried to erase you. But now the truth stands. Your father sees you. The world sees you. And I see hope, not perfection, not fairy tales, but a family stitched together with cracks and scars and love that refused to die. One day, you will read these pages, and you will know you were never a mistake. You were the reason we all learned what strength really means." She closed the book, slid it into the drawer, and for the first time in 2 years, felt the weight lift from her chest. Weeks later, Ethan stood in the church beside Janelle as Micah toddled down the aisle between pews, neighbors clapping, Miss Alvarez weeping into her handkerchief. It wasn't a wedding, it wasn't a grand statement, it was a baptism, a blessing, a simple declaration that this boy, once denied, once hidden, was now claimed in full view of the world. When the pastor asked if they would raise Micah in truth, both Janelle and Ethan answered together, "We will." And for the first time, the words felt not like a promise hanging by a thread, but like a foundation. That night, Ethan carried Micah on his shoulders through the frosted streets, Janelle walking beside them. They weren't untouchable. They weren't perfect. The scars remained, but there was laughter, warmth, and the fragile, stubborn hope that had survived every storm. At one point, Ethan whispered, almost to himself, "This is the only empire I ever needed." Janelle heard him, and for the first time, she didn't doubt. Years later, when Micah asked about the day he was born, Janelle told him the truth. Not the whispers, not the headlines, just the truth. "That was the day you changed us all," she said, smiling through tears. And Ethan, gray at the temples now, added softly, "The day I finally learned what it meant to be strong." Did you find the story interesting? Follow and join me to discover more interesting stories.